We talked about risk taking with neurodivergent young people and why there might be a lot of neurodivergent people in prisons. We take risks. I'd like from both of you to understand why, because I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger, and I did a lot of things that were risky, and I took a lot of risks. Why is there, you think, a connection between
I think there's something about that just needs opening up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the reason there are a lot of neurodiverse people in prison is because they're failed by our education system, and many of them are unemployable. I think what is perceived as risky to some people is just out of the box thinking to other people. In other words, if you don't conform, if you don't think like we do, if you don't do as we do, then therefore you're a maverick, you're a rebel, you're a risk taker. Well, if over 30% of entrepreneurs and everything else then hats off to that. I think any creative mind is inherently somebody who dares to think differently in a world where you risk being excluded for thinking differently.
That's a good answer, Tom. Really, really good.
I think Tony's right, and I mean, I do think that because you get that dopamine hit when you're trying new things out as well.
Yeah.
We can't ignore the connection between ADHD and drug taking.
Yeah.
And gambling.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But back to what Tony said, if you're having a difficult time just trying to fit in, you will seek solace in a different way. You'll have a drink, you'll take some, you'll have a smoke, or maybe you'll try to go at bingo because everything else is going wrong. So where I think a lot of other people who don't have ADHD will be able to restrict that risk taking, that kind of wanting to get that dopamine hit, they'll be able to control it more successfully. And if you go into a prison, the amount of people with ADHD in there
I've heard that.
25%.
Gambling.
Undiagnosed, though.
Yeah.
Undiagnosed.
Undiagnosed. Self-medicating. So, before we start thinking that everybody's taking loads of drugs to get high, that's not the agenda. The agenda is to get calm. Most, if you look at the research data on ADHD and offending, what you'll find is it's mostly opportunistic and low-level crime.
And debt.
Yeah,
debt.
So it sounds to me as if half the population and kids are set up to fail in an educational environment if you're
you
saying
don't identify them. Yeah.
Because then they're never going to fit into that way.
But even if we do identify them, often in the culture and at the moment is we don't screen young people, isn't it? Why not?
Yeah. Because I don't think we screen because we can't afford it.
But we can't afford not to. Look what it costs us
They've decided not to kind of... I think we're all learning about it, aren't we, at the moment? But hopefully they will prioritise
I wonder sometimes whether educational policy is still rooted in this idea that some people are genetically superior to others, that some people are intelligent and some people are not. Well, again, what do you mean by intelligence and how do you measure it? And this idea that IQ is a catch-all when in fact it isn't. But even if you're going to use IQ, low IQ doesn't correlate with dyslexia or ADHD.
It doesn't.
But it's just assumed in school that your low ability if your spelling isn't good or you know.
And we reward our citizens who are particularly good at the written word and maths. So you get people in those industries who are really, really heavily rewarded by society. It doesn't matter if they're complete, whatever.
Other fields, but they're good in the.
They're good at the stock market. So you know what, we're going to just chuck loads of money at them and reward them.
That's not fair.
Yeah, no.
And it's wrong. I'm just going to quickly bring in Mr. Stephen Davismoon. So Stephen, we started off today, and I introduced our colleagues here, and I told them a bit about how I became into this situation of doing a PhD, and how it was you and Gary that mentioned about the work I've done and considering doing a PhD around this whole thing of being neurodivergent, but also the arts. Mm-hmm. So it'd be great to just get your take before you have to shoot off home, because you're the dean at the university. So it'd be great to set a brief introduction, but then also just the conversations I've had with you about this whole area of my PhD and how you think it fits in with the work I'm developing as a thesis. Mm-hmm. Would be really great. So, mic is yours.
Okay, I'll try not to drop the mic.
I love that.
My name is Stephen Davismoon. I'm Dean of the School of Creative and Performing Arts here at Liverpool Hope University, composer, professor of music as well. I think that creative study, I hope I'm not going to repeat things you've already said, by the way, but I think creative study in the performing arts is of benefit to everybody, but those that may describe themselves as neurodiverse for a number of reasons, really. I think that it comes to the business of intuition, and I think that something like intuition and sensibility is really prioritised in the creative and performing arts, perhaps more so than in most other subject areas, where you are searching for a level of originality, really, in the very highest of students. And I think that perhaps because it doesn't have such a focus upon the hegemonic model that the written word has within pedagogy. So by that I mean that you'll be assessed on how you dance, how you paint, how you sing, or whatever, as well as how you write about it. But that won't necessarily be the most important aspect of how you're being assessed and measured. So I think there can be that kind of benefit as well. But I'm also now, after the excellent conference that you had on Friday, really one of the best conferences I've ever attended. Tony, so you and your team should feel very, very proud of that. Here at Hope as well, we do sometimes students do joint degrees, so it might be, dance and childcare or something like this, right? So, and it struck me that that there could well be benefit then for the more academic, more traditionally academic subject, by way of the students doing half of their degree in the performing and creative arts as well. Because, for all of the kind of things that we've spoken about, that it unleashes a whole level of confidence and
absolutely,
and so on. That they can sense that they're really, really good at something.
This is the practical. As you mentioned about the practical elements that can be embedded within an academic way of learning.
Yeah, but
as we call it, just academic.
Yeah. That traditionally academic. Yeah.
Traditional. Yeah. That there's practical ways of now recording. Again, your different ways, like if you're dyslexic or find it difficult to write, that it can be done in a podcast, or in a visual recording of yourself, where you don't have to sit down and write. There's so many different ways.
The challenge that I have, though, and I think that every university employer will say this, is that the problem that I have is that I'm kind of a guardian, if you like, of the students that come here. I want to make sure that the degree that they have when they leave us will help them to get a job in somewhere or another.
I get that,
right? Because they're forking out the best part of 40 grand to study, and so it's a lot of money, 30,000+ pounds. And unfortunately, at the moment, although perhaps things will change after the speakers at the conference were saying, but unfortunately, still a lot of the workforce is measured by how people can write. But I don't know yet, because I'm still quite new to this field of inquiry, but my feeling is that perhaps if we can encourage ways of writing that will include a much more holistic approach to how you're writing. So I know, with your dance experience, if you were to have had to write, you probably wouldn't like to write any 10,000 word essay or dissertation, but if you were to write a 10,000 word dissertation about something that you've embodied, you would feel totally different to that than if it was a 10,000 word essay on the ballet russe from the 19th century, right? I don't know. Perhaps I don't want to put
I
words
probably
in
would,
mouth,
but I prefer to visually record the words that I'm saying than to write it. And would that make a difference if I was to put my words down as a visual recording?
There are some people who think that their way is superior to yours.
I know, that's
but
what I'm saying.
I think the issue is culture and context, isn't it?
Do you know what I'm saying about, you said that you have to write it down, which, of course I can write, but some people that with dyslexia would prefer maybe to record it on an audio recording.
So the big challenge I would have is that
Yeah.
any graduate that comes out of here, if they want to get public money to fund their art, they're going to have to write an arts council
And that's
grant.
with a pen and paper.
And there's no way around that at the moment.
There's no way
And
around it
that's-
with pen and paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the big challenge that we have to as you were saying earlier, to enable us all to measure that people are intelligent without having to fill out a 40-page application or something.
And the report and the evaluation at the end.
So
it's tricky.
So continue, continue, Stephen.
So that's one of the big challenges. How can I absolutely say on the one hand, definitely want to support as much of a diverse type of curriculum as possible, but I also on the other hand want to make sure that I'm tooling my students up with being able to get a job at the end of it.
You run a creative performing arts university, so it is mainly dance, drama, and singing.
Painting.
In your assessment, the types of young people that are attending the university, are they of an academic, or are they more, as we say, neurodivergent, out of the box thinking kind of people that attend creative?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps a bit of both. I mean, I think that there's certainly, I think it's something like 20 to 25% of our students have declared ADHD. Okay. So there's a chance that obviously it's a lot higher than that. Don't know for sure, but the chances are that it's higher than that, the percentage here. We do though have in different programs, so art design history, that's a much more traditional kind of academic course. There are aspects as well of film studies that again is much more of an, it's film analysis. You write about the films that you've seen in an informed way. But in every other program, there is quite a balance between. In fact, I would say in a lot of programs there's probably more practice than actual traditional written word.
Yeah, right. So I'm gonna crack on with just a few.
But I don't want to be too depressing. I think some
of
the things that you had was quite encouraging. That we should be looking for different qualities in people when they come for a job. And that was really great to hear. I think.
I mean, I think we will, and I think some of the the deepest thinkers in the UK today are advising the government that one of the key areas we can make money as a nation in the future is through the creative arts.
Absolutely.
And I think once they realise, once that kicks in, once we get to the stage where actually this is a brilliant way of us making money, our creativity is a brilliant way of us making money, and we haven't had that before, then they will actually start to form a curriculum which actually tests creativity. And I don't think it does that very well at the moment, because we're not allowed. You're not allowed. You've got, like you say, you've got to prepare people for work. But I think once they really try to nail down how to assess creativity, how to actually test it and teach it, then things will change. Yeah.
But it was interesting, wasn't it? There was that piece of research that was talked about at the conference the other day, where they did this kind of metric on children, and they found that 98% of them thought creatively. But by the time they'd finished education, it was
Remember that? Yes.
It was something like less than 30% of them.
3%.
3% even. Sorry, yeah. So, and you just think, so 2 or 3%. Are we educating people not to think? This is an interesting question, isn't it? Are we educating children so that they don't think?
And it's worse in other countries as well than it is here, isn't it? Apparently,
Is it because, Tony? Sorry, that when you go into the teaching system or the school system of learning a specific way, then you're already starting to detract from a child's creativity of thinking for themselves and learning for them. Or supporting their learning creatively, because you're imposing a system in a way.
I think we've got to be mindful here that the people who created this system did so with good intentions, and despite the fact that I disagree with a lot of the things that Ofsted say, I know that it's well intentioned, but the reality is, you can't make everybody think like you and tell them that they do not belong and that they will be excluded in one way or another if they don't think like you. That's not education. That's socialization and control. But I think, I think the world is changing. I think for all its problems with social media, it has been very democratizing in terms of access to knowledge and information. I think of necessity, the language that we use has to evolve and change, and how we communicate it has to evolve and change. Like we were saying before, dyslexia was around long before the written word. So was ADHD. And again, it's this idea, isn't it? If you don't think like this, if you don't learn like this, if you don't have this particular type of intelligence or intellect or whatever it is that they're measuring, then therefore you don't belong. And what we're seeing now is that the economy, the world is changing. Look at how tech has influenced culture and the economy and the workplace, and the kind of skills and competencies and attitudes and intelligences, because they are multiple, it's not just IQ. What we need in industry and in our economy is not necessarily now what young people are being given in our education system. We've got a lot of big global brands now saying, I'm sorry, being a graduate, what does that mean now? It means you've got a degree of knowledge about a particular curriculum subject. It actually doesn't tell us about your ability to apply that knowledge, i.e. intelligence. It doesn't tell us about your attitude, your passion, your commitment, your particular cognitive strengths. It doesn't tell us any more than that. And I think this is the real challenge, I think, to our education system and to Ofsted in particular right now, is industry is saying, whatever it is that you are educating children and young people for, it's not a good fit for the 21st century.
Isn't it? It's changing. It's definitely changing.
And and on that note, there are some really big industries that are targeting people who are
ADHD, dyslexia,
in your meeting again, there are definitely people targeting that. We were mentioning that the creative industry is the biggest or fastest growing sector, especially in Liverpool. By far.
In the nation.
So we know that there's a lot of workforce for creative people.
But again, I think creative people in every industry. I think being a CEO is a creative.
Oh, most definitely.
Is a creative role.
That.
I think anybody in any role can think creatively if you allow them to do it, and if you encourage. If you're an accountant, you can think creatively, and I'm sure a lot of them do. But there are lots of ways that you can think creatively. Yes, we need systems. Yes, we need processes. But I think, and you see this a lot, don't you, in a lot of big public services. It's almost where the systems and processes, even if they no longer work as well as they did originally, that we defend and protect those systems and almost to the point where they matter more than the people for whom those services were designed, i.e. the voting taxpayer, who, and we say, well, if what the service you need doesn't quite sort of fit this process and system, then the computer says no, and there's nothing we can do, And
the other thing I think as well, and absolutely, Tony, I agree, is the pressures that schools will have through auditing,
absolutely,
and universities as well will have through auditing. So we'll have the QAA, breathing down us in the way that Ofsted will be breathing down any kind of school as well, and that's so that could also hold back teachers, lecturers, tutors from becoming rather more flexible. But we shouldn't give up. We have to try and make it happen, create the space for that.
And we've got a lot of children who don't even attend school now, and I think, there was a comment from a minister that said, we'll just take their benefits off their parents, and I thought, well, that's a bit offensive, because first of all, we're assuming that any child who doesn't go to school, their parents must be on benefits, which is absolutely not true. That's it. Or this idea that you can punish people into doing what you want them to do, and actually that doesn't work unless you have a very unequal society where power is concentrated.
They try to do that. I'm going to ask you the same question. So if we know that young kids, say in school at 6 or 7, are neurodiverse, and they'll have a tendency to learn with more creative ways of learning. How do you think, or how would you approach, I mean, Steve, you're an academic, how do you think the schools then should approach, if there's 50% of kids that learn creatively, and it's through with their hands or with music and sound, what would you say the schools or primary schools nurturing those young kids?
Cognitive profiling.
Yeah, if you know, then and they found what should be in place to provide those kids in those settings with that learning.
Cognitive profiling, you find out how every child learns in a way that plays to their cognitive strengths.
They're really cognitive. What did you say? Sorry.
It's a simple quantitative computer-based test that tells us what particular cognitive competencies come naturally to you and what ones maybe don't come naturally to you. But with those reports, you get a whole list of, well, you might not excel, for example, at mathematics, but here's a whole list of strategies and assistive technology that will enable you to overcome any challenge in that particular cognitive competency.
That makes sense. Like 11 plus.
Play to people's...
No,
I don't think it's 11 plus. I think it's about helping people understand themselves. I think it's fundamental to us as human beings to know who we are and to evolve and achieve our potential. And as a social species, feel safe and protected and belong to different social groups, whatever those different social groups are. Okay. But we have a fundamental need, don't we, as human beings, to be known, that we need other people to understand who we are and what strengths we have and what needs we have. It's fundamental to our process and individuation as human beings. And I'm a big lover of Alfred Adler, who was an educational Alfred Adler is the 30s, Adler in psychology. And how can other people know you if you don't know yourself?
And you would do this what periodically for a child's...
I would do it every academic year. Takes about 25 minutes. There's no reason why we couldn't be doing that, because at the moment we're relying on SATs exams. I don't think a handwritten exam in an 11-year-old is the best way to identify their competencies. Yeah. And actually, their brains are more plastic, and there is more neurogenesis in the age of 0 to 7. You know, we need to be thinking much more creatively about early years education and you know, understanding that different people's brains work in different ways and develop at different rates, not just say, well, you're less able because you should be able to do this at age 6 or age 10. Cognitive profiling is a far better way than doing school exams as a way of measuring people's ability and potential.
And they used to have a lot of drama and dance and singing in schools. And I think you know that they've depleted that area of performing arts in lots of schools. Do you think they should be integral as part of school, that they should always be...
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about STEM, don't we, at the moment, because that's where industries are. But, you know, without the humanities, and I've heard Stephen say this, it's human beings who use the science and technology. The humanities are just as important as science and tech and engineering and maths.
What do you think,
and who makes the content for those, you know, for those technologies as well? You know, who designs the way that those technologies look?
Aren't they creative industries as well? Yeah, absolutely.
So it touches on everything. That's what I said in I think one of the first things I said on Friday in my lecture is that, you know, the creative arts, creative disciplines is what makes us human. And you're absolutely right that you don't have to be an artist, so to speak, to be a creative. Not at all. Everybody, you know, is because it's about being human. You know, we change the colour of our, front room because we're human and we're looking at it and thinking, don't like that anymore. I want to change that. I want to change how it looks and how it feels. It's innate in all of us, you know, levels of creativity. I'm afraid, buddy. I'm so sorry. It's
no, Stephen. Thank you very much. That was Mr. Stephen Davismoon joining us for a brief chat on our podcast. We will finish shortly because we're running out of time. Shall we just go through some of these questions and then... Sure. Yeah, so one here that I would like to ask you is, what learning from creative and performing arts do you believe can support teachers, and I should have had Stephen answer this as well, teachers and university staff to enhance neurodiverse young people's access to further and higher education? So that's just what you believe, how you can support teachers who might not teach in a way that is, because I know my teachers failed me, and if you were gonna
Do we train teachers to teach, or do we train teachers to deliver a curriculum and how to assess it?
What are they trained to teach? Just one format of kids, child, and if kids are neurodiverse, should teachers have an understanding of how? Be prepared.
Yeah, going back to what Tony was saying before about the cognitive profiling, I think they are taught that different children learn in different ways.
Teachers are. Yeah. They should do, yeah.
And I've been on Train the Trainer myself, and I was taught that some people learn this way, you pour knowledge into the head out of a jug, and some people learn that way, they do stuff. I think at the moment the structure within our schools is based on intellect. And you've got grade 1 or group 1, group 2, and the group children.
In the front of the class, and middle and the back.
Yeah, the ones that class as bright go in that one, and then and really, if I was a head teacher, I would be defining those groups by how those children learn, which may well be based on a cognitive profile. So I say, well, these children learn in that way, and what I would do is on Wednesday's afternoon it would be history, and if you learn through doing, you go in that room.
Yep.
And if you learn through listening, you go in that room. And so there'd be lots of history classes on the go at the same time, and the children could choose
just different ways
which one they went into.
You should be definitely.
I should be head of the Department for Education. I know. That's how I would do it, and I just what's so difficult about that, really?
So how does that happen in terms of if one wanted to make those sort of changes? Is it has to come from?
I have no idea, Dov. I have no idea. Tony, you know probably a lot more about
because that's what I'm
education
thinking. It's good to have these.
I think one of the things we've got to get off is this obsession with inclusion, and I know that sounds really bizarre for somebody like me to say.
Yeah.
But the idea that one teacher can cater for so many different needs is impossible.
Of course it is.
And I really believe in specialist education. I don't believe in special schools, but I really would have loved, like I said before, somebody to have knocked on my door when I was a kid and have said, you learn differently than other people, therefore we're going to send you to Hogwarts.
Because that's where you're going to get your best out of you.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a different school. Like I say, it could just be a different classroom within the same school. But I think there needs to be a different way of kind of making those groups so that we can teach in a more effective way.
And I have to rein you back in terms of like looking at the arts and performing arts as our closing thing. In terms of performing and creative arts, and both your experience in your field of work, do you see a connection when it comes to, and I think we touched on this, whether it's music, whether it's dance, whether it's drama, whether it's art, and if there is a connection for neurodivergent people, what would you suggest? Because
it's the original language of humanity. Before any letters or dialect or dictionary was ever created, the language of humanity is through expression,
and sound and dance and expression,
instinctive.
And so what then should learning, or is learning for young people, you say instinctive and probably historic for us to learn that way. Why don't we embed that a lot more in our learning format or the way we teach and learn? If it is,
I think it will change, and I think we are about to see a big change, because the powers that be, the establishment, the old boys network, it's all about money, isn't it? And money talks, and I think that because what's on the horizon is an opportunity to make an awful lot of money out of the creativity of this nation, I think things will change, changing for the wrong reasons, but I think that will happen. I think there are definitely patterns within the numbers of people with autism who play a classical instrument versus a number of people with ADHD who love drum and bass. I think there are definitely patterns. I was just thinking about youth subcultures and punk and emo and wondering whether there was a connection there. And I think we are all individual, but actually we are run by this organ up here,
The brain,
and
the mind.
I think for me the answer will always come down to the neurochemicals and what's going on there. That's my interest. That's what I like to read about. I think I'm just a collection. My thoughts and my patterns are just a collection of neurochemicals, and so there's probably quite a lot of patterns out there that we'll start to understand a lot more as we learn more about the brain and how it works. And we'll see all of that. We'll say, oh, it won't be a cognitive test, it'll be a neurochemical test that we'll do on each other and go, oh yeah, looks like you're going to end up being a social worker for blah, blah, blah.
I hope not. No, I don't think it'd be. I would hope it never becomes that prescriptive. But I think
would be nice though,
it
wouldn't it?
it'd be wonderful.
Our brains are quantum energetic fields of bioelectromagnetic energy that is communicated and transferred all around our body. But I think what we learn is usually so much driven by the context that the individual or the collective group find themselves in, is that what do I need to know? What do I need to learn to thrive and be happy and belong? And I think a lot, and I used to sort of work a lot with young people who never really wanted to do homework and never wanted to revise. But you know what? I'd ask them what the most exciting thing was that they did all week, and they said, go out with my friends on a Friday night. And I'd say, right, and when do you start preparing that? When do you start planning that? And they said, Saturday morning. And they'll spend all week texting, WhatsApping, Snapchatting, and then on Friday, even the sweaty boys who didn't even have a wash all week would be in the bathroom for hours, brushing their teeth and putting aftershave on and everything else. To do what? To go and sit with a group of friends in somebody else's house in their bedroom listening to music. Because the genetic imperative is relationship driven in all of us, and that need to belong. And I think particularly for young people, our brains don't reach full maturity till we're 25. There's an evolutionary reason for that.
Yeah.
The genetic imperative is relationship driven. How we as human beings live and thrive through relationship with other people in all kinds of different contexts is what determines whether something is relevant or not. And I'm sure everybody in here has kind of been around people who they like, admire, or even fallen in love with. You are interested in what they are interested in because you're interested in them. And a lot of it is down to this kind of quantum neurobiological kind of manifestation of processing that goes on in our brain and nervous systems. Yeah. But the reality is it's something about our common humanity, I think, and that's what makes things relevant and meaningful.
And just to kind of draw it back to where we are now with all of this and what science is telling us and where science is at, I think human beings are far more advanced in their thinking than the science we've got at the moment.
Oh, God, yeah.
A really good example of this is that I was reading one paper one day which told me that people with ADHD have constipation because they can't sit still long enough to go to the loo.
Really? Where did you hear that?
And in another paper I read that people with Parkinson's get constipation because they've got low dopamine levels. And I'm thinking, hang on, there's something going on here, isn't there? But the science is all over the bloody place. And, we are right at the start of trying to understand the brain and how it works. And, we've got an awfully long way to go.
Without a doubt.
Right at the start of trying to understand what it is to be human, I think. We've got a long way to go with that as well.
Yeah.
No, because I've got 3 years to go for my PhD, and I think this is a good starting point for the discussion that I've had with you two today, because in 3 years' time, hopefully, we would have come got a long way further in terms of how we understand neurodivergent thinking and learning, and hopefully I would like to play a major part of what I learn over the next 3 years in a thesis that I can contribute hopefully to young people learning through creative arts. So I'd like you to both just leave us with a little ditto of yourselves of what you feel, because you're both neurodivergent. Just a bit about what you feel being neurodivergent means to you, and where you'd like to maybe see, hopefully, the
Well, like I
world's
said,
understanding.
I don't identify as neurodivergent.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I don't like the word divergent, deviant from the norm as its root. I use neurodiverse as an identifier, as a lot of people do. But, you know, it's an evolving language, and I respect people's right to identify however they wish. To me, it just means that I think differently. And sometimes that's made life more difficult. But in other ways, it's some of the best of who I am. And that's just how it is. I don't know what it is to think any other way.
You're a wonderful person with your personality the way you are, Tony, like I am. And if that is labelled as neurodivergent...
Well, I think people, I know it might sound a bit trite, but I think people remember you not for your titles or your letters or whether you were dyslexic or dyspraxic or ADHD or whatever honours or medals you got. People remember whether you were a kind decent human being or not. And let's not introduce people by whether they're ADHD or dyslexia. It's not the most important thing about you.
That's a good thing that I'd like to use in my thesis when I end it, is that whole thing that, and I think Stephen and you and many people have mentioned about the labelling of being or saying that you're ADHD, because it's not something you suffer with, it's not something you have. You're born as you are, and people didn't label you as, oh, he's got this illness or he's got ADHD. What do you mean he's got ADHD? He's Tony. That's the way he is. He thinks in a specific way. His character is like, you know, that's the way. And that for me, I accept every young person for it. But unfortunately, a lot of young people are judged, and a lot of people are judged for their behavioural patterns. And if you don't fit into the norm, then you're considered.
Or if you're different in any way.
Nanette, what would you like to put to this thesis of mine that you'd say?
I think.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important, the thing that's helped me is self-confidence. Even if I faked it, for a large part of my life, it's self-confidence. And I saw a lot of children at my school who might have been black or gay or whatever, and some of them got bullied and some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't were the ones that had self-confidence, and that was about having a good social network around them. And I think I want to say, if there's anybody out there listening that is neurodiverse, don't think for 1 minute that doesn't mean you're as intelligent as everybody else. I know, and I'm going to sound really arrogant now, but I don't care.
Go for it then.
I know that I was one of the most, if not the most intelligent child in my year at school. I've got a first-class degree. I've run an organisation very, very successfully. And I've done all of that without being able to spell the word disability. I can't spell the word.
I don't
disability.
like that word. I
don't like that word either.
Maybe I've done well because I can't spell that word. I've been looking for other words.
I think, Nanette, do you think young people don't care what colour your skin is or what your sexual orientation is or whether you've got ADHD. They don't care. Those kind of prejudices and stigma we're taught to children and young people of my generation. That if you're not like this, you don't belong.
Yeah.
And you're less than, and you're othered. And I think young people, thank God, are much more accepting of difference, and that to belong, you need only to be human, not a certain colour skin or a certain sexuality or a certain type of brain.
And I think one of the reasons we've evolved in that way, and we are evolving all the time, is because it's people in the creative industries that set the tone.
Absolutely,
we write the music, we do we are in charge really of the way that people view each other to a large extent. Produce the television, the radio, the music, you name it. It's produced by creative people. Yeah. And so it is up to creative people to keep pushing the boundaries and just keep on that human rights road that we're on, because that's what it's all about.
Culture achieves more than economics.
Absolutely.
Economics wouldn't exist without culture. Arts are not valued anywhere near as much as they should be in our education system here in the UK.
Well, I'm going to be championing the arts, and I'm sure you know that. But we're going to be coming to the end of our podcast now, and our Vodcast and recording. I'd like to really thank two wonderful guests today, Mr. Tony Lloyd from the ADHD Foundation and Nanette Mellor now from Drake Music. Yeah. And if you want to get more information about being neurodiverse, ADHD, please do drop me an email at dove@hope.ac.uk. Follow my journey over the next 3 years doing a PhD, and I hope you found this podcast interesting and exciting and informative. And for all you ADHD and neurodiverse wonderful people, keep pushing yourselves.